Well, hey guys, welcome. Just a couple minutes late. I'll be honest as to why. I'm running a caffeine deficit today. This is a Food Forest Farms, and Scrambling's usually out there in the live audience. Food Forest Farms Blonde Espresso Roast, and even though I don't have an espresso machine, I have to say this is one of the better coffees I've sampled. And so check out Food Forest Farms coffee. If you are in the chat with Scrambling, he's usually on float when he's there. He can tell you how to do that if you want help with that. Not really anything relevant to the discussion today. Well, I guess it is because he is classic anarchist. So as I stall, as always, before we start the recording, I just wanted to let you guys know that maybe didn't partake today in the poll. We did a poll today for the topic, and the topics were reloading, getting started reloading. The other topic was strategic relocation within the United States. And then the third topic was the one we're doing on being an anarchist in a world where we just have to acknowledge that we will never, ever, ever in our lifetimes be the majority of people. And I was surprised that this one won handily. It won by a good 25% over strategic relo, and strategic relo was 2-1. It's actually a little bit beyond that, but at least 2-1 over getting started reloading. But there was a lot of interest in all three. So I think we will do next week with 4 episodes. We'll do one on reloading, which I've been hesitant to do because of component shortages. And we will also do the strategic relocation in the United States. As many topics on Miyagi Mornings because we've covered both of them on full podcast topics. Anyway, I think that's enough stalling, right? It's enough stalling to get people on board here. StreamYard is clearly lying to me with our numbers because it says we have 10 total people watching the stream, and we have 12 just on float. Now it says 15 over there, but I got to believe we have way more than that. And I'm just going to check real quick before we get started. 7 on Odyssey, so on our secondary platforms, we are banging pretty good. So this is, it says somebody's asking FF Farmer. It says finally risked a trip to the barber. No, the hairs still have not been cut. I am hoping to break away today and do that. I was going to get my hair cut over the weekend, and I'm like, well, that's stupid. There's going to be people there. When you work for yourself and you work from home, going out on weekends is just dumb unless you absolutely have to, because that's when all the muggles are out there muddling things up. Anyway, let's go ahead and dig on into this subject. I want to get one of the screens showing my notes for me here because I do have some talking points today that I don't want to skip over. That'll work right there. I won't be interacting much on the live feed during this recording so that I can get through it. And I pretty much won't see any of the comments during the feed except those on YouTube because they are amalgamated, I guess you'd say, right here in front of me. All right, so with that, let's roll. Well, hey, folks, welcome to Miyagi Mornings episode. What the hell is it? I think it's 151 today. Yeah, 151. And it's a good number for rum. But today we're going to talk about something that, well, I guess anarchists and rum kind of go together. There was a lot of rum running among the pirates of the day and among our founders running rum and wine both into the colonies prior to the revolution, and those guys were as anarchist as it gets at that time. Anyway, for those just tuning in now, I do want to point out we had a poll today, and you can always get more input on Miyagi Mornings and the show in general and the TSP community in general. If you follow me on social media, this one went up on MeWe. It went on MeWe because MeWe has polls and Float does not. Listening to Aaron and Kingsley, yeah, you don't have polls. Anyway, so today we're going to talk about being an anarchist in a world where we will never, ever, in our lifetimes anyway, be the majority. When I talk about anarchy, I often say that you have to have 7th generational thinking. And I'm going to be honest, it's a really nice way of saying that basically, if we ever live in a world once again, because there was a time when the world was dominated by anarchistic thinking, but if we ever live in that world again, if it's ever permitted to flourish, you won't see it. You have to think of, and I wrote it out to figure out what 7 generations would be for great-grandchildren. Great-great-great-great-grandchildren. It's a really nice way of saying you'll die without seeing this. So then you got to ask, well, what's the point? Should we bother? Is it even matter that we identify ourselves as anarchists? And I'm going to say that, I think that the entire idea that we say I am an anarchist, or I am a conservative, or I am a liberal, or I am a Nazi, or whatever the hell you come up with to identify with, most of it comes from a component of the human psyche, which actually is part of what makes us really amazing creatures, in that we need to categorize and label things. And that is a huge component of what makes up real science. The fact that I can, look at the tank, the fish tank that's just on the other side of the camera from you guys, and I can look in there and there's 20 different plants, and I can identify them, and I know what they do in their characteristics. There's, a dozen different species of fish. There's crustaceans. Like, that is part of the taxonomic nature of science. And so identifying things is important, but maybe self-identity is one of those things that we feel that we need an ism or an ist to go with who we are, whether we're survivalists or, minarchists or anarchists or statists. Like, we need some way to self-identify. I don't think it's necessarily bad, but I think when it comes into the world of anarchy, maybe it's a little overused, or maybe just like we put a little bit too much importance on that identification for ourselves. And I think it's really because, and you guys let me know in the chat, but I think for most people that become anarchists at some point in their life, they don't sit down and say, okay, what side do I want to join? Which is why I consider it an apolitical ideology. They don't sit down and go, what do I want to work towards? How do I want to participate in the political system? How do I want to, what things do I want to force upon others? It's like completely opposite of that. I think you come to anarchy is a system of belief, not a political ideology. So if people ask me, well, what's the point of being an anarchist if you don't think your side will, quote unquote, win during your lifetime? That's like asking a Christian, why do you believe in Jesus? They've made a decision based on faith and morality to be a Christian, or to be a Jew, or to be a Buddhist. In a lot of ways, being an anarchist is not a religion, but it's more like a faith than it is like a political ideology. It all comes from the concept of, I don't think it's ever okay, ever, under any circumstances, for any person to take stuff from another person or harm another person who's being peaceful. I don't think that's okay. And I will never think that's okay. And I don't think because a bunch of people got together and put their hand up and said, we vote for Bill to be able to take people's stuff, or we vote for Tom to be able to be mean to people, that it makes it okay. It's always wrong, the end. So the decision to be an anarchist, to me, and I'm interested in what many of you guys feel about it for yourselves, if you categorize yourself as an anarchist. Do you think it's something you decided to be, or do you think it's something that you realized that you are, and that's what you really always were? And so then to not live that way, to not accept that about yourself, to me, that then we can just throw away who wins. It's to live in denial of the reality of who and what you are. So I start from that point, that this is a moral decision based on my belief about how I am required to treat other people. It doesn't really affect how other people are required to treat me. It does give me guidance as to what I can do to defend myself and where the line is. But it's not because I think that, one day everybody will hold up a big circled A, and then we will win a convention somewhere and we'll take over the whole government and then disband it. That is not why I'm an anarchist. I'm an anarchist because I believe it is wrong for me to steal from you, and I believe that it's wrong for me to take your property, and I think it's wrong for me to hurt you. And I think the only time that I can morally break those three things is if you're trying to harm me or you're trying to harm somebody else in an instance where they're not aggressing on you. Done. Next, it's really important that we understand being right does not mean we will win, especially when you play the game poorly. So recently, I did a Miyagi Mornings that was about, sovereign citizenship and trying to stand under that legally and all. And I said, this is stupid, and it's a good way to end up in prison. And it doesn't work, and it doesn't mean what you think it does. And you can't go into a courtroom and say magical words and basically tell the judge, my magic is stronger than your magic, which is how a lot of people present that. I think a lot of people took that to mean that I didn't believe in the sovereign rights of the individual, which that's when you're tuning out what's being said because you don't like something else the person said. I absolutely agree with the principle, but it's not an effective strategy in dealing with the state. And it's the same thing as if you wanted to go from point A to point B, and the most expedient way to get there is a dark alley that is controlled by gang members, that it is known that if you walk through there, you will be assaulted and shaken down for any of your possessions at best and murdered at worst. And you say, but I should be able to go anywhere I want. So you walk through that dark alley alone and unarmed. That's stupid things in stupid places and with stupid people, even if it's just you because you're being stupid. It doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're going to lose. So in that case, we either need to be heavily armed and surrounded with other people, or we need to take another route. And this is how we have to approach dealing with the state's systems. Okay. And if we don't, we get shivved, metaphorically speaking, right? Because, we're going to deny the state the right to take our property tax. They're going to come take our property, and we're going to lose that fight. At this stage of the game, that is not the way to play the game. It really isn't. And I think that if you don't get that, you won't be able to design your life in a way as an anarchist or even as an anarchist libertarian that's going to keep you in the seat where you get to win more than you lose. Next, we do not need to solve the problems the state has not solved in thousands of years to justify our belief. Every time I talk about this subject, I get, well, how are you going to fix this? How are you going to fix that? And my response is, okay, we've had the state in its modern form throughout a lot of the world for at least 5,000 years. And the more we learn about ancient history and fallen civilizations, the more it looks like it's maybe tens of thousands of years with periods of anarchy in between. And in all those thousands of years, your state system has not fixed that problem. I do not need to provide a 2-sentence answer to how to fix that problem to justify my belief. I do not need to solve a problem that you have failed to solve. And in most instances, the state has actually made the problem worse. I don't need to be able to perfectly articulate in 2 sentences how to fix that to justify my belief that you stealing from others to fail to fix it is wrong. And we need to stand morally on that alone. That is enough. We don't need, there's all types of potential solutions in a private sector economy to every problem that there is, but none of them are perfect. None of them will ever be perfect. No anarchist promises perfection. Anarchists accept there will never be perfection. But we do know if you take away choice in how we choose to solve our problems, we'll get worse solutions, not better. If I have one place to obtain my security from, I'm going to get bad security. If I have one place to obtain the education of my child from, I'm going to get a poor education for my child relative to what I could have if I had a choice. It's that simple. And so we need to create choices within a system that's designed to be a monopoly. However that plays out, using whatever tools and leverage points and weaknesses of the enemy that we can. Next, you need to think about the often quoted and used to defend statist ideology Bible verse, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, and you need to think about it differently. The first thing you have to do is you have to take that quote and you have to understand it in its context that it was used in the Bible. And I'm not a religious person, but if we're going to go there, I have a pretty good mastery of the subject matter. In the stanzas or the verses preceding that statement, it's very clear that what was going on is leaders in the faith were trying to trick him. That's the exact words. They tried to trick him. They tried to trick Jesus into saying, don't pay your taxes, because they wanted him dead. And they knew if they went to the Roman governor Pilate and said, he said not to pay your taxes, and he had shitloads of people following him around, they'd kill him. So you got to start with that context. But even in the statement itself, text is the lowest form of communications. It doesn't have nuances. And so we always think of Jesus in the Bible of speaking with authority and kind of this like commanding thing. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar. Just see Jesus rolling his eyes and saying, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And render unto God that which is God's. Interesting in the context of trying to be tricked. What Jesus was saying is when you play their game in their world, you have to play by their rules. And when you play God's game in God's world, you play by God's rules. And a lot of anarchists are like maybe turned off by that because you're inherently not religious. I'm not either. Doesn't mean we can't learn from philosophy that has lasted thousands of years. And when I say render unto God that which is God's, I mean in the natural world, obey natural order. And in their artificial world where you choose to interact with it, you need to learn to play the game by their rules better than they do. We'll talk more about that in a second. One of the ways we can do that, though, is we need to always use private contracts when the situation allows for it. If you do anything with anybody that involves both of you making commitments to each other, and then there would be some sort of recourse if that commitment failed, you absolutely should have a contract, and that contract should absolutely require private arbitration if it is in dispute, period. And I always write my contracts non-binding private arbitration first, binding private arbitration second, and then it ends. Because if I have, then again, if you force me into the state system and I have to go get the state's apparatus to enforce the private arbiter's decision, I'll do it. Years of business, decades of business, never had to go past non-binding arbitration. Not once. Not one time. As soon as you get a non-binding arbitrator in who doesn't have an incentive to side with one side or the other or to suck money from you, people become very reasonable with each other very quickly. It doesn't always work, but it's always worked for me. Always use private contracts and a little stipulation of common law here. It is always in your benefit to be the party that does not draft the contract. This is kind of outside the anarchist world, but it is knowing how to play their game. And the reason you never want to be the party that drafts the contract if you don't have to be is there's a principle in common law, and that is that any ambiguity in a contract benefits the party that didn't draft the contract. And honestly, in the statist world, we need to start applying that to the Constitution. The contract that is the Constitution is a contract between the states and the people. The federal government is not even a party to that contract because it didn't exist when the contract was signed. The contract was made between the people of the respective states and the states collectively forming the federal government, as though you and I got together and created a company. The company's not party to the contract. You and I are party to the contract. And who drafted the contract? The states drafted the contract. The people did not. If there's any ambiguity in the contract, by common law principle, it should benefit the people. A little civics lesson there. But always private contracts. The system was built, and I'm talking about the system that we hate, but it was built to favor three things when it comes to how money is stolen from you. It was built to favor entrepreneurship. It was built to favor investment, and it was built to favor real estate when structured properly. It was built to do that because it was built by people who sit on their ass all day, paid with public money, and have lots of access to lots of things to leverage into those three worlds. And they're paid to pass laws by people that only exist in those three worlds. All those lobbyists work for corporations who make their money through entrepreneurship, investing in real estate. So it just stands to reason that they built the system to when you're inside the system to favor those three things. Those are the ways to keep the most of your wealth, build the most of your wealth, and pay the least in taxes. And any accountant that tells you that's not true is stupid and shouldn't be your accountant. Any tax attorney that tells you that's not true is stupid and shouldn't be your tax attorney. What does that mean? It means that we should be participating in all of those or some of those. Because if we're going to interact with them where we have to follow their rules to some degree, we want to do it from the most strength-filled position we can. And there's no fourth one there. Passive investing, i.e. capital gains, is taxed less than labor. And it always will be because it benefits them to do so. Real estate, you can make tons of money in real estate and literally pay no taxes, just as former President Donald Trump, right? And then entrepreneurship turns many things that would be spending in your life to expenses in your business. Everything is designed for that. So where we interact, though we prefer not to at all, but where we do, that's how we should interact. The next thing is, sometimes we just need to shut the fuck up and do our work in silence. Not everything that we do that's in defiance of the state needs a billboard on a highway that says that we're doing it. Back during the time period where it was illegal to own gold in the United States, there was a famous protester, I don't remember his name now, but he went up on an overpass and had a picture of himself holding up a bar of gold and said, "I dare you to arrest me." Sometimes that makes sense. Most of the time it doesn't. If you are acting against the state successfully and you have a good enterprise from doing so, shut your fucking mouth and go on about your business in that gray market, black market world, and then do your activity within the state system as an entrepreneur, as an investor, or as a holder and investor in real estate. And keep those words separated from each other. I know that sounds somewhat defeatist to some people, but it's not defeatism, it's smart. It's why all the mafia bosses in all the movies you've ever watched about the mafia always tell the flatfoot that's trying to arrest them, "I'm running a legitimate business." And then there's a legitimate business with legitimate books. Learn. They put the whole template right in front of you, put it in a movie to entertain you. It's actually more educational than what you'll get in school. I'm just saying. Sometimes we need to shut up. We don't need to always directly go out and flaunt our defiance. Sometimes we should, many times we shouldn't. Know the difference. Next, get your kids out of the government schools now. Do not send your children to Caesar for an education and be shocked that they come home as Romans. There is one thing you can do, and one thing only, that will have the greatest effect on starting that seventh generation cascade, and that is take away their ability to brainwash your fucking kids. Stop making excuses as to why you can't do it and figure out how. As soon as you say you can't, you shut your mind off. That's not anarcho thinking. How can I? You ask that question long enough, I don't know what the answer will be, but I do know you'll find one. And the beauty of it is, instead of me telling you how to do it, by you asking that question, you will find the answer that will work for you and your family. The answer that works for me and my family probably won't work for you. We're different people. We live in different places. We have different careers. We have different income levels. We have different levels of wealth. You might be way wealthier than me or way poorer than me. I don't know. But I do know that 90% of Americans spent an awful lot of time in the past year with their children getting their education at home. Whatever you needed to do to figure out how to do it, you probably already did so. Figure it out. Take your children away from them. I cannot emphasize how important this is. How can the seventh generation live with what we're trying to build if we give the second generation to the state to control, to brainwash? And the answer is it can't. This will be the first step. The first generation that the majority say, no, you shall not do these things to my children. Screw off. You will not touch them. You will not have them. They are not yours. You do not get them. That's when the seventh generation clock starts. That means right now it ain't started yet. We're even being whimsical at 7th generation. I'm just trying to get you on the right path. Take your children away from them. They are not worthy of your children. They're not worthy of they see your children as dollar signs. Dollar signs. Do you know when you pull your kid out of school, that school gets about $15,000 less a year? Take your children away from them. Enough said. Next, don't make your life harder by where you choose to live and how you grow where you grow your life. We'll talk about that next week with strategic relocation. But don't go moving to like an HOA in the middle of a heavy regulated city, in the middle of a Democrat-controlled city, in the middle of a Democrat-controlled state, and then whine and bitch that you can't even own a chicken. Of course you can't. You made a dumb decision. If you've already made that decision, figure out how to get out of there. I mean, one thing we have in this country that very few countries actually have is a true republic structure. And that republic structure results in sometimes moving across the road, removing or causing dozens of laws to either affect or not affect you. I literally live in a different world than people that live less than 1 mile from me. Less than 1 mile from me, there are people that live in a town called Lakeside. They have a local ordinance book this thick. For those that aren't online watching the video, they're listening to the audio. I'm about 2.5 inches thick of local ordinances that apply to the city of Lakeside that do not apply to me at all. I don't even have codes where I live. They live a mile away. I don't live in the middle of nowhere. Be strategic about where you live, because otherwise you are starting a game that's already stacked against you and you're giving points to your opponent. It's like going in and playing somebody in darts and you have a handicap of 15 and they have a handicap of 25 and you give them 6 marks. You're going to lose. You're going to lose. They should be giving you like 8. Don't do that to yourself. Next, and this is the most important one, and it's going to sound a little weird after all this preaching, right? But don't get a Messiah complex. And what I mean by that is, yes, I'm making a case for anarchy and living this way today, but you're choosing to listen to this. I'm not out knocking on your door metaphorically and saying, have you heard the good news about our Lord and Savior, the anarchy? Right? And it happens, I think, to anarchists the same way it happens to libertarians for the same reason, but at a different level. So if I take it back to libertarianism, you know, I remember when I first heard about libertarianism. At the time, I considered myself a small government Republican, which is just dumb. I was stupid. I mean, honestly, I was completely stupid. There's no such thing as a small government Republican. Look at every place Republicans are in charge. They may have less government than Democrats, but it's massive shit tons of government. It is like waiting for Santa to bring you Easter eggs to believe that you'll get small government from Republicans. But I was, because I didn't know there was another choice. And somebody sent me a video. I think it was about Ron Paul. And it was before the revolution, right? It was way, way back. And then I learned about libertarianism. I started reading all these books and I started finding out about, you know, there's a libertarian party. It's been around since the 70s and you can actually vote for the. And I was like, holy shit. All I got to do is tell people about it. Who else has had this experience that's in one of the chats, right? So you find this and it's like beautiful music. And you go out and you tell people about it and they don't want to hear it and you blame yourself. You know what you think? I must be explaining this the wrong way. Because I know most people are like me. I know most people want freedom. I know most people want to be able to choose the way they live their lives. So I must not be explaining this right. And it's frustrating, and it's a lot like banging your head into a brick wall until eventually you realize, no, wait a minute. I'm explaining this perfectly fine. I understand what I'm talking about. I'm explaining it perfectly. The people I'm explaining to must not actually want liberty and freedom. They must actually want government, statism, and tyranny. And it's very hard to accept what they do. When you walk all the way to anarchy, which is just a honest, logical assessment of true natural order. Any human, through their very existence, has a right to be truly free and should not have their things taken or their property seized or their body harmed by any other human, and has every right in the world to resist by any means necessary when another human does that to them, and has every right to seek the assistance of others when that's done to them if they're not strong enough to do it themselves, period. And when you realize that, you're like, well, of course, everybody believes this. No, they do not. We are not the majority. These are not people that you can start unplugging from the matrix and red pilling left and right. They want things the way they are. They just want to win their side of the battle. Remember where we started today. We choose this path due to a moral belief that it is wrong to harm and steal from others, the end. Most people in the political system today choose their belief based on the way they want society controlled. Even the Republican that really means what they say when they say it, like I did when I was stupid, that says, you know, I want less government, blah, blah, blah. Start asking them, okay, well, what can we get rid of? And you find real quickly, you start talking about getting rid of things and they start wanting to cut your throat. Because, well, what happens when we do this? These other people over here will blah, blah, blah. In other words, you want to control other people. You want to set boundaries for the way other people live their lives. So what people do when they're in that mental state, which is a wholly unnatural state for humans to exist in, is they feel compelled to pick a side. And once they pick that side, they'll just, no matter, have you guys noticed this? No matter how stupid something their guy does, they'll rationalize and defend it. No matter how wrong it is, like if you just change the initial that goes after the dude's name, they would literally want them hauled out, tarred, feathered, killed, and launched on a rocket to the sun. But their guy did it. So, you know, it's not really that bad. It's just a bump stock ban. It's okay. Trump's still pro Second Amendment, right? Hey, I know he said to take the guns now and do due process later, but, you know, you just have to understand the nuances. It's nonsensical. It's nonsensical, and it's things that they would never allow the other side to do. That tells you you're dealing with an irrational group of people that cannot be reasoned with. You can't reason with them. And I don't mean this in a way like, you know, the people that think there's no difference between a man and a woman and they've never tried milking a bull, obviously, that are completely idiots that are like, you know, you need to ask me my pronouns before you speak to me or something like that. Like, I don't mean it that way. I mean that in the end, you can't reason with them. You just can't reason with them because they've denounced reason. Because they feel a need to pick a side to affiliate with, and therefore anybody that's not on that side is the enemy. And it's not I'm on the left and they're on the right, or I'm on the right and they're on the left. It's I'm here, and anything outside in any direction is the enemy and must be smited down, right? Must be smitten. We got to get rid of them. They're evil. So don't try to be a messiah. Live your life your way. Learn to play the game that they've set up and stacked in their favor in the way that they play it. Take control of the education of your children. Render unto Caesar that which is Caesar. When you choose to go into Caesar's world and any place else, sometimes just shut up and go on with your life and build wealth and build happiness in your life, and realize you've made this decision because of what you believe from a moral standpoint. And that means you have no need to justify it to anybody. With that, we will wrap up for the week, and I'll be back next week with some new topics on Miyagi Mornings. And I will hang with you guys a little bit here in the chat and continue the live stream as soon as I get this recording rendered, because again, I don't believe in allowing Murphy into my life. And boy, this is going to be a long freaking recap podcast this Friday, man. That's another 30-minute one. I'm going to have to start paring these things down. But guys, I hope that, what is it? Oh, I love this question. Debt-free eBay. What is the difference between anarchist and libertarianism? All right. It's going to sound like a cop-out first, and then I'll explain it. My feeling about libertarian and anarchist is all anarchists are libertarians, but not all libertarians are anarchists. So libertarianism is a political ideology, makes room for what they refer to as minarchism, the smallest state possible to do the things that are necessary to enforce things like individual rights, minority rights, and the smallest minority is the individual, and property rights, and a national defense. That's the basic core of the LP.org party, which is the worst political party that's ever existed in the United States if you judge them on what they've been able to actually accomplish. I'm sorry, they've won nothing. The anarchist says, if it's wrong, it's always wrong. If it's wrong to steal tax money from people, if tax is indeed theft, then all tax is theft, not all the taxes except the ones you think we need because you can't figure out how to do it. And the anarchist generally comes from a viewpoint of, if you allow any government to exist, not governance. Governance can be private and governance can be opted into and opted out of. We do it all the time. You might be part of a club. You have rules for your club. You don't want it anymore. You stop being part of the club, right? So you can have, like, HOAs would be fine with me if there was no government, if there was no state, because then it would be a voluntary form of government in a world absent of government, right? Where with HOAs today are basically, well, I've got state government, I've got local government, I've got federal government, I got county government. It's not enough government. I need more. Like, so that's where I have a problem with HOAs. And the libertarian feels like, well, but we got to have more roads. We got to have roads. Got to have schools. Maybe we can have a voucher system, school choice, whatever. But we got to educate people and we got to have roads. So it's okay to steal to do that, right? The anarchist says, no, that's not okay. And the anarchist also is the surgeon that says, I'm not leaving 1% of the tumor in the cancer patient if I can cut all the tumor out. Because if I leave a little bit of tumor, not only will it grow back, it'll probably grow back faster than it did in the first place. It'll probably actually metastasize and grow faster than if I didn't remove it at all. If I left it alone, it would probably grow slower and kill the patient more slowly than removing most of it and leaving some of it, because generally when you do that with a tumorous cancer, what happens is it explodes. Sometimes you think you got it all and it still causes an explosion of the cancer because you've opened up the body and you've let things in and it's interacted with these malignant cells and they go postal. The only thing you can do to try to get a person recovered and I don't remember what the word is because we don't really cure cancer. It's called not relapse. It's the opposite of it. Whatever it is, the only remission. The only way you can put somebody into a remission of cancer and have it sustain is to be 100%. So if we have a little government, it will actually become a tyranny faster than a mid-sized government because it will have all of the prosperity between being a minimal government and a mid-sized government to build momentum when it goes from that point forward. And I submit to you that there was probably never a nation as free as this one at its founding, and there is no nation in the world today that has a larger apparatus of government and control of its people than our own. Period. And that's the difference. That's the difference. That's a great metaphor and more resistant because everyone will suddenly join it. 6 months. I don't know what that means. Special Operations Equipment says, hello. Hey, John, you show up today and I'm not wearing one of your shirts. I wear your shirts like 9 out of 10 shows. Sorry, man. Let's take a look over here on Odyssey. Privacy VPN has some use cases. I don't really know what that has to do with today's subject. They're talking about Sentinel over on Odyssey. So we're going to go over on Float and see if anybody's got anything from there. Even, quote, freedom-loving Republicans. Yeah. You know, I don't like to pick on freedom-loving Republicans or libertarians or whatever. I will attack the philosophy, but not the person. Anybody here that's been an anarchist your whole life and knew it, let me know in the chat on any of the services here, on any of the chat windows. And I guarantee there's almost no one. Almost all of us came from some place. And I've met as many people that came from far leftist ideology to anarchism as I have from, right wing, as we think of it, ideology. And it's because left and right are not really like this. They're actually like this, right? So if you got like the real political spectrum is like you have anarchism here, and then you have like minarchism, classic liberalism, republicanism, conservatism, right? And it just keeps going out. But you're actually your conservative and liberal are much closer than either of them are to anarchist or libertarian. And of course we don't teach that. That's another reason to get your kids out of the school system. But yeah, so I don't pick on the person because of course they believe that. Why wouldn't they believe that? Of course they think they need to pick a side. Why do you think we have elections in school? Why do we have, the first time I ever voted for a president of the United States, my vote mattered about as much as the last time I did it, by the way. But I was in second grade in Catholic school, and I voted for Ronald Reagan over Jimmy Carter. What the hell does a second grader know about picking a president? The answer is absolutely nothing. You might think, well, Jack was just, for smaller Reagan, man, right? All of them suck, but if you want to talk about a guy that actually made government smaller, no, Reagan didn't make government smaller. He to this day has presided over the largest tax increase on American people ever. To this day. Sorry. You know why I voted for Reagan? Because Carter was stupid. Yep, that's what I thought. Carter's stupid. You know why? Because the adults around me said Carter was stupid. So I don't want to vote for the stupid guy. And this Anderson dude, remember Anderson, right? Third party, right? He's not going to win. And it looks like Reagan's going to win. So I'm going to side with the winner. That was part of my conditioning as a child. That was conditioning me to pick a side. And we freaking elect class presidents the same way we elect federal presidents, right? The person you like more, who's more like you, who looks better, whose name you know better, is the one you vote for class president in high school. And that class president in high school literally has no power, makes no real decisions, and the administration of the school does whatever it wants. There's your deep state. It's all the same. It's all mimicked all the way out, and it's all part of your programming and your conditioning and your indoctrination. So, anyway, what do we got? We got a comment here about Jesus, but I've lost it now. Don't know where that went. Sometimes, Jesus made their tax money show up in the mouth of a fish. He specifically did not make the disciples work or do a collection plate for the amount. Not sure on that one. We are not supposed to be like God. We are supposed to be like Jesus, according to the New Testament. That applies to you, Hayes. It does not apply to me. Because I don't choose your ideology. And that's freedom. However, I am very much in sync with Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson actually made a book called the Jefferson Bible. And it was basically the New Testament with only the sayings of Christ in it. And all of the miracles removed. And he did that, and he said that this is because he believed that the morality of Christendom was the finest set of morality ever developed for man. That we would all be better off if we treated each other with the ethics of the New Testament and the ethics of Christ. I completely agree. And do you know, until the early 1900s, every freshman congressman, so senators and reps alike, one of the things they got when they showed up that first day was a copy of the Jefferson Bible. From the Constitution forward, after we got rid of the Articles of Confederation and replaced it with the Constitution, that was indeed the case. Today, when your congressman, your senator shows up for their first day of work, do you know what they get? They get a binder. Do you know what's in that binder? This is a true story. You can go to a website called definingthemachine.com to learn more about this. They get a binder, and in that binder is a list of donors, and they get a bill. They get a bill. Do you know what the bill is for? Helping them get elected. even if they were diametrically, if the party didn't want them, they were a reject. Basically, the DNC or the RNC says, hey, we spend money in campaigns to get Democrats or / Republicans elected. You're a Democrat or you're a Republican. Our money that the party spent in this election cycle helped you get elected, even though we hate you and wish you weren't here. Here's a book. There's an office over there. I think it's the office that AOC was in when she was supposedly going to be killed and raped during the January 6th bullshit, by the way. That office, right? So you go over there and you start going through your binder and you start doing a minimum wage telemarketer's job. And you start making phone calls and say, I'm a new member of Congress. I would like to reach out to you for your support of the Democratic Party. And this is a very softball list of people that will give you money. They're known donors. And you just put yourself on the hook to every single one of them that writes a check to the party in your name. And I know what you're thinking. Well, you know what I would tell them? I would tell them, go screw. I ain't doing it. And you know what they'll say? That's fine. You don't have to. And this is what you'll get to do. You get to show up on voting day and vote. No committees, no bill sponsorship, no involvement in the process whatsoever, no submission of amendments. It's called the party dues system. You do not get to do anything except vote up or down. You don't get to participate in any of the legislative process. In fact, on the House side, there's a fucking price list, a published price list. You want to be chairman of the committee? This is how much money you have to earn for the party. You want to co-sponsor a bill? This is the cost of that. You want to be in a committee seat? This is the cost of that. So when you tell me about small government republicanism, I'm sorry that I don't believe you. I'm sorry that I think you're stupid. I don't feel that I should personally attack you for being stupid, but I just think actually you're ignorant. You either don't know these things or you're in denial of them. How do you get small government with that system? You don't. How do you get small government in a system that requires soliciting money to do anything? When a person comes there with an agenda and a goal, and no matter how pure it is, they're quickly schooled with, you play ball or you don't. You play ball or you don't. This is our stadium. This is the rules. You want to show up a couple times a month and vote up or down on shit? You can do that. Otherwise, you don't do shit unless you play ball. And how do you pick up a phone and call all these people and raise thousands? I think it's like $150,000 that they have to raise. Like that's their first, bogey. You hit that, then we can talk about you doing something. And here's the price list. Here's the additional shit you got to do if you want to do any of this other stuff. How can you do that and not end up on the hook with all the people you called? You can't. You want to know why I'm an anarchist? Because this is what statism always looks like in the end. Anyway, guys, I got to go today. Sounds like the only answer to small governments is going back to tribes. Sort of. I think tribalism can be a good thing or a bad thing. I think that self-organized groups, if we're going to call that a tribe, okay. If we're going to call a tribe, a name, and if you use that name, then you're bound by this belief system that's probably larger than the self-organized group you're in. I think right there you start heading back to statism. Tribes lead to councils, councils lead to committees, committees lead to governments. That's just how it works. Anyway, guys, I got to go. I used to be a huge liberal. Then I started paying taxes, 35% of my income. That's actually not that bad. A lot of people pay a lot more than that, dude. Before I started doing things the way I do now, being a highly compensated employee in the past, when I added up all my taxes, and I don't just mean income tax, I mean all the taxes I paid, I was paying close to 60% of my income in tax. Today, I pay more like 24% of my income in taxes. And that's all in. That's every tax I pay. Like I said, you need to learn to play the game by the rules they set up for themselves that advantage them. Anyway, with that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I appreciate you. Have a great day. And remember, the podcast will be out later today, probably live around 1 o'clock, 1:30 on a Thursday, expert council Q&A. And this incredibly long recap of all the episodes this week of Miyagi Mornings will be out on Friday morning.